Hey guys, Draco here, and yeah, this is Lord Tower again. Long time. Now some of you are probably wondering, why is Draco here, and why are we not seeing our great old man Jimbo? I mean Jim. That's because, frankly, the next two floors are really long, so I figured I just handle all the stuff, and then yeah, like I'm trying to make this respectful for your time because I know your time's important and valuable to me. So yeah, and well, I like doing this in perspective because I think it's kind of funny for you all to hear it in a canonical way from someone who kind of jokes around and messes with this stuff. I respect your time and I want you to also enjoy this video and not like go in for a minute long and then be out of it. Okay, how long this is taking. And yeah, so we'll go on to the next floor. And before I do, comment down below if you want to see me do this series from now on as Jim, or if you want to see me do this in say a way that's like this, because or just make a wiki about it. They'll make things or like what something like that. I don't know. Anyway, let's set up. Yeah, this is essentially the politics floor. It has two big factions that, oddly enough, haven't. One's kind of appeared, and the other hasn't showed up at all. And then we've got some stuff about the continents, and also the well, yeah, religion. Probably one of the biggest stuff in this series, if you know your stuff. Anyway, let's get on to the first book about continents. I was doing multiple tries. Anyway, so there are four continents in the world. There's Nermenos to the north, Denrokai to the west, Nelfor to the east, and Lycaos to the south. And then, as well as, and something I forgot to write in, there's also actually an island in the middle of these called the Isle of Peace, which is, as it sounds, it's basically, or Isle of Unity, whatever you want to go with. It'll work for you what you want to call it. It's essentially this place where three where there are settlements in the continents. They kind of come together and essentially have peace talks and diplomatic debates and all that crazy stuff that doesn't matter in this series, kind of. Anyway, Nermenos is to the north, and it's the most populated, but ironically enough, the entire northern half is like it's just frozen lake wasteland. Nothing is there. It's just cold and ice and snow and all that horrible stuff. uh, like the wall in Game of Thrones tenfold. And the entire continent's also cut in half between these northern and southern halves by the Varkothian Mountains, which are it's a giant mountain range that extends from coast to coast. Probably the biggest mountains in who knows. Anyway, the continent is home to a lot of nations, such as the Dragonhold Empire, which we'll get to that next after this. Denrakai is the westernmost continent, and it's mostly desert, but it also has stuff like jungles and oases, and it actually has a couple islands, tropical islands, off its coast. So if you want to look for little ties there, go ahead and try. And it has a lot of beastmen, so stuff like cat people. But it's also famous for spices, so stuff like paprika, pepper, that mess. The entire mess comes from this. Nelfor is next, and it's the easternmost and probably the worst of the four. It's got a lot of swamps and bogs and stuff, and it's probably worst land feature is something called a mud lake, which I hope I invented that. I'm gonna laugh if I did, because it's essentially this large span of land. It's a giant field, essentially, of mud and dirt with no plants. And you have no idea. Like, you could take a step, and you can't tell if it's solid ground or a giant pit ready to drown you in mud. Oh, that's a horrific thought. Until you step in it. So, yeah. And, yeah. And the only exception to the horrible landscape is its lakes, which are like crystal clear and extremely beautiful, but also have nothing in them. And the area is populated by lizardmen and trolls and all that stuff. So stuff like Farouse's descendants. Oh boy. Anyway, a lot of like fishing ships or whatever will try to stay away from Nermena, Nelfor, or even going in its direction because of the mess of it. And then finally, we got Lycaos, which is southernmost continent, and people virtually know nothing about it. And it's where our heroes, so people like Draco, William, and Storm, this is where they're from, kind of. Draco's from Nermenos, but this is where they are in the series from season 1. So, this has all the shit, like the temples, and Hunter's Vale, and Storm's Village, and all that. And it got its name from where in lore, it's the quote-unquote birthplace of werewolves, but also elves identify it as the elven homeland. Which, and if you think about it, considering this is where, because in theory, this is where Earthendroth and the other spirits touched down when they created the world. So, so in a way, it's actually where all life is from. Because, well, they created humanity from this spot. From Lycaos. So, Anyway, we go on to the next of the Dragonhold Empire. And basically, the Dragonhold Empire, or Dragonhold for short, is one of 7 major nations or territories or whatever within the continent of Nermenos. And it's predominantly human, but it has some little settlements every now and then. There are stuff like elves or dwarves or whatever, or all that mess. You'll hear about all this stuff a bit later. Anyway, Dragonhold is the largest and southernmost territory or nation in Nermenos, and it also occupies almost all of the coast of the south coast because it's just big. Anyway, we get to then, and how it came to be is supposedly a mystery, but a lot of people agree that it along with the first Imperial Dynasty, which basically means a bloodline of this one dude who took over after the Old Kingdom. So essentially, the Old Kingdom, or Vorkodia, existed for a long time. So this is stuff like Michael's timeline, back in Captain Michael and that mess's time. And Michael left when things were starting to hit the fan. So when the old king, one of the last kings of Vorkodia, or the Old Kingdom, died, and the oldest of his 6 sons became king, and he became known as the Tyrant because he was one evil mother fluffer, who also might have had connections to Shadroth, but meh. And basically, this followed when the Old Kingdom, under the Tyrant, fell at the hand, and essentially was, how would you say it? Usurped, essentially, at the hands of Emperor Damascus Ironite and the 5 Elder Princes. Essentially, the other 5 princes from. Because in actuality, the quote-unquote oldest is actually the youngest son. And his 5 elder siblings, or elder princes, took over. And that, well, yeah. And essentially from there, the first Imperial Dynasty, if you want a good comparison, think the Septim Dynasty from Elder Scrolls. That's a good comparison. And yeah. Anyway, the first Imperial Dynasty was one of the oldest bloodlines in the world, starting with Damascus Iron Eye, a general of the Old Kingdom. And it pretty much died out when Draco was born. 21 years before the events of the series occurred. So, before Season 1, Episode 1. I pointed out because there's some flashback seasons coming up, possibly in the future. I don't know. Anyway, essentially, after it died out, it led to a war for the throne to see who would begin the Second Imperial Dynasty. Meet Dynasty for the comparison. And it resulted in the current emperor, a young man being in search for, like, religious support. So, like, people on the level of the Pope to support him. Because his grandfather took the throne in a barbaric conquest. Basically, he massacred everyone else. Everyone else who wanted the throne, he killed him. In a bloody battle. That's never gonna get shown on YouTube. Anyway, from there, this only succeeded because the bloodlines of the 5 elder princes, also as the 5 elder families, pretty much took themselves out of the fight because they didn't care. It was like, oh hey, meet the new boss. He's the same as the old boss, except not. Anyway, it's also home to smaller kingdoms, or regions, if you will, and villages such as Wolfclaw, Hookwall, and Raven's Keep. Wolfclaw, for those who are Spiritbound fans, you probably know for a fact that that's where Drake goes from, kind of. Hookwall, that's where, well, you'll find out in the next few Sidestories, depending on how it goes. And then Raven's Keep comes along, and that's something for Season 2 to wait. And you'll hear a bit more about that in the next one. And then it's also said that in recent events that the Empire has also come into conflict, so fighting an organization working out of Raven's Keep, calling themselves the Raven Collective. And the chief of Raven's Keep has actually been accused of working with this organization and has rejected all claims. Wait for Season 2 on that. That leads to some funny conclusions. Anyway, just for comparison, let's go to the freaking Raven's Keep. I mean, not Raven's Keep, but the Raven Collective side. Which, as you can see, these banners, even though they're a bit backwards, they should look very familiar. Anyway, it's basically a secret criminal organization working out of Nirvanos, taking over villages for unknown purposes. Basically, I haven't gotten around to writing the reasons yet. And it's been noted that after the collective takes a village over, people vanish from them without trace. Or they just flat out get executed. In the case of the Council of Storm's Village. Yeah, this is the people who took over Storm's Village. From there, the organization is rumored to have a headquarters somewhere in Raven's Watch, so essentially the region, or kingdom, if you will, in Dragonhold, ruled from Raven's Keep. And then some have accused the chief of Raven's Keep to be working with these criminals, and whether this is true or not has yet to be seen. Literally, you might see the way in Season 2. And then villagers of coastal villages, so stuff like Hookwall or whatever, have also said of how, like, they've basically said, oh hey, we see a boat with the Raven Collective banner heading south. towards like chaos, perhaps. And reasons for this are unknown, even though this is the all-knowing tower telling us this. And yeah, not much more is known because I haven't got. For one, I wanted to keep something secret. But yeah, essentially, concept of it is that not much more is known about the organization other than what is in this book and a slew of unfounded rumors, lies, and half truths. I'm gonna pause to catch my breath. All right, and now we're finally at the religious book, and this is actually a book called. Let me check, because I forget these things. Yeah, it's called The Study of Faith by Gendry Baylor. Game of Thrones fans, take that as you will. And let's head in. The first one is essentially it's a concept of in the world there's a lot of. I'll just read. Various religions exist throughout the world, many being on a tribal or not so organized level. So basically, they're very unorganized, very chaotic, with not much standing, but they're interesting nonetheless. And in the following pages, the author Gendry, this guy who literally I just write the name for based off what the topic is, Gendry. He from there he's gonna list some of these that he's learned about, who they're led by, and what their beliefs are. So basically, just who leads the organization, what is, and yeah. So the first one is the Order of the Fates, the big one, and it's pretty much the primary religion, the main religion in Normenos, which it's basically led in a sense by the Fates, which are a group of essentially psychics and seers, people who can see the future, whatever, who can each fate or can basically see the future based off one specific aspect of life in the world. So stuff like there's a fate of fortune, a fate of war, a fate of death, and I'm gonna probably list some of this out later on. But right now, trying to write this stuff is hard. Anyway, the prophecies is the prophecies are relegated or spoken by each fate, and then essentially then brought down to the masses by the disciples, who are essentially apprentices to become fates later on in life, to essentially take the mantle from the masses, if you will, and then to the local governments, and then to the people. And each prophecy is then taken very seriously in most cases, because obviously you want to prevent a fucking war. If it's on the horizon. Anyway, while most believe directly in the fates themselves, it's actually said that the fates speak of a great water goddess who blessed them in the past with a knowledge of the future, oddly similar to the next religion. This is basically because they got their powers from Karain, the spirit of water, of the sea, spirit of moon, whatever you want to call her. Yeah. Yeah, basically it's a concept of where all religions are tied to one, it's just perspectives change. Anyway, the next one is essentially the big one in the actual kind of one with a lot of truth. This is the Spirits Templar. And it's a religion that believes that four spirits create the known universe. Earthendroth, Karain, Pharos, and Zephyra. With Earthendroth being the apparent main figure, because he's the oldest symbol of the four spirits. And yeah, he created all that shit one way or another. To be fair, he is indirectly responsible for the creation of entire universes, if you think about it. Yeah. And while there isn't a leader really, because it's basically almost a dead religion at this point, but only held together by the fact that it's actually true. And that some northern series have been known unbelievers. So stuff in like the northern half of like Dragonhold, and in the more northern nations, they believe in freaking the Spirit Templar. So like giants. I might post the map one day. I don't know, because I got a map drawn out for this stuff, and it's funny. Oh boy, let's get on with it. And it's basically saying that there are rumors of the religious sites being which is literally true. There are temples, giant temples, giant temples in Lycaeus, in Runner's Vale, for the Spirit Templar, because this is the actual religion, kind of. It's not really a religion, it's just fact. And then the only strict belief is that necromancy is forbidden, like, because, well, Shadroth, his power that he gifted to man to destroy us is necromancy, because it's against life. It's a magic of death. And then the children of Yggdrasil, which is the faith of most elven villages, in which the faith describes a being called Yggdrasil, who is actually Earthendroth, who created elven in kind from the world forest Yggdrasil, which is, for those of you who remember, that's Earthendroth's dimension. Well, his sort of realm in the spirit realm world. And village elders are said to be leaders because they are sort of the religious half of the community. They lead religiously in each elven community. And they're basically just the oldest people in the village, which they guide the people on the right path. And then there's pureblood, which is vampires stuff, which is basically the concept that vampires believe that the bloodlines of the first vampires are pure, and as such, and pretty much overlords of everything else, they are the greatest things, and that it is pretty much a death sentence to disrespect them. Like, if you were to, like, just walk up to one of these guys and say hi, rather than like bending, like putting your entire body in a bow to the ground and kissing their feet and all that weird bull crap. Like, you have to treat these people like gods or else you're dead, practically. That's basically what it's saying. And they have their own castles and manors in the vampire territory. And then we get the tribal warfare, which is basically that several tribal cultures, such as Orcish and Giantish, believe in trial by combat and war with each other for power and strength. And then Misk, which is, there are countless minor religions and cults that are too wild to gather information on. And then oh my god, I didn't even mention that Shadrothi cult. Mess. Anyway, I think the only one I forgot there was the fact that there's necromancer cults who believe in Shadroth, but that doesn't really matter. Now does it? Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, like the video. Comment down below if you want to see more stuff like this, or if you want me to go back to how I used to do these episodes. And yeah, subscribe if you're new, and thank you if you're not already subscribed. Anyway, subscribe if you're new. Have a good day, everyone, and see you all next time.